With just days to go until deputies continue their debate and vote on whether to sack Guernsey's senior political committee, its President Deputy Peter Ferbrache offered himself up to media spotlight after it emerged a behind-closed-doors meeting had been scheduled to try and turn doubters' mind to keeping at least 3 of P&R's members in place for the next 18 months. Deputies Mark Helyar and David Mahoney have already resigned from Policy and Resources, leaving empty seats at the top table and the chance for a refresh, whatever happens next week. The incumbent president is hoping that is all that will need to be considered by the states right now, as he plans to pitch for unity and collaboration in the face of wipeout. This is Politics Disassembled, and I'm Kit Hanna. Here I sit down with Deputy Ferbrache to discuss what's been called a last-ditch attempt to garner numbers against the motion, and what he might do if he's given the boot as early as next Wednesday. It was reported in the media this week that you'd sent a letter to all deputies asking them to attend a meeting on Monday morning to try and cut through some of the issues before the resumption of the motion of no confidence debate. And I just wanted to ask you, what are you hoping to achieve from that meeting?
Well, I think we're going to have a result, whatever that result is, on Wednesday about whether the motion of no confidence succeeds or not. This wasn't intended to do that, but there will be a result. So there can only be 2 results. Either Policy and Resources is replaced or it continues. In either case, we've still got 18 months or thereabouts of this assembly left. It's got to be, we've got key issues to address, and they're stacking up really. We've had lots of external things that we've had to deal with. We're dealing with external matters all the time. They don't hit the front page of the media because they're not hyper, unless there's something that's really dramatically going to affect Guernsey that day. People, quite rightly, are more concerned about education, health, taxes, houses, which I understand. But the idea is to sit round with states members, those who want to attend, and say, okay, whatever happens, folks, we've got to make the next 18 months as productive as possible. We've got to come up with some compromises because it's clear on major issues that we're in a logjam. I did suggest, if you recall, that there'd be a general election, but SAC came back, and I fully accept their good faith and their judgment, that the earliest we could do it was about next October. Well, bear in mind we've got a general election in June the following year. What was the point of bringing it forward sort of 7 or 8 months? In my naivety, and I'm sure it's my naivety and not the fault of anybody else, I thought we could have had one in 2 or 3 months. I fully accept SACS did their homework and said that's not possible. So I'm not criticising them, it's just facing the reality of where we are.
Okay, so that's off the table then, this idea of general election.
It's from my viewpoint, because I honestly thought, well, 2 or 3 months' time, we clear the decks, we have a fresh assembly, there'll be some people go because they want to go, there'll some people go because they've not been re-elected, there'll be some fresh voices and talent in the states, and the states will have a clear view for the next 4.5 years or whatever it might be.
Okay, perfect. We'll turn to a few of the things you said in a moment, but just keeping on the meeting scheduled for Monday, you've mentioned some certain things like confidential issues, which are obviously confidential, but we know, for example, there are constitutional problems right now with the UK in terms of how they are understanding the position of the Bailiwick and how we operate, partly to do with ministerial churn and all these other things. Indeed. There's also Brexit, there's inflation linked to war, corporate tax changes coming in internationally, and of course environmental treaties which we are subscribed to, as well as all the domestic challenges you've mentioned. Now, of course, these will be quite clear to a lot of states members, as you said, because they have to grapple with these issues. So what are you planning to say with regards to that? Is it to focus their minds?
No, it's going to say, look, let's forget our views on particular issues as individual members. When I say forget our views, I mean don't cast them asunder and start with a thing. Don't just collate with your friends, whichever group you're in, and I'm not saying necessarily our groups. Let's sit round, let's form little working groups, but quick, fleet of foot working groups on whether it's education or tax or housing, whatever it may be. Talk to each other over the next X number of months, but come back with some clear views that we can perhaps put staging posts in between now and the next election.
So it's a plea for unity, effectively.
It is, and it's a plea for, we've all got to compromise. Compromise means, as a lawyer over the years, I've had to do with lots of compromise. Compromise means nobody's happy, because those who've got to pay think they've got to pay too much, and those that receive think they haven't received enough. But compromise is saying, okay, I really think that would have been better, but I can live with this because at least it gets something done.
And do you think that will be a realistic prospect, the result of the meeting?
If you, as an old school teacher of mine said, if you don't try, you can't succeed. If you do try, you might succeed. So all I can say is that it's worth a try.
Okay. And of course, on Wednesday, I assume we will resume that result, the vote.
Yep.
With still a few left to speak. You said in your letter to deputies recently that whoever is at the helm in policy and resources, they will need strength of character. What do you fear if you and your remaining colleagues on the committee are indeed replaced?
Well, I just think that, and I'm not casting aspersions on you in the media have heard names mentioned, just like me. I wish if I am deselected, if that's the right phrase, and somebody else is elected, I wish those people well, because they're going to have a difficult task over the next 18 months, as I've already indicated. Mm-hmm. They've just got to be strong. Yeah.
Can you understand the calls for a refresh and reset, though? Given,
I don't think it's and I'm not saying it because of vested interest, because I've got a vested interest. If I thought I wasn't the right person, I would have stepped aside 6 months, a year ago. I just think with everything going on, it takes such a long time to learn this job too. I've got to say, because it's a unique job. We're not a prime minister. We've got no executive power. I'm one of 40 people in the States. I've got no more vote than somebody who's not on a States committee. Okay, I'm head of the senior committee and we can try and steer policy. But for example, in the UK government, the UK Prime Minister, he picks his education minister, he picks his environmental minister, etc., etc. And the cabinet, the government, says what educational policy is going to be. Here, I'm just using education as an example. I think they've got a very good president, but education policy is brought forward initially by the education department, and then it comes to the States for the States to approve it or otherwise.
Okay, and of course, we've spoken about sort of bringing the States together.
Yep. There's
of course a wider problem of restoring confidence in the States amongst islanders, because obviously people are exasperated that certain business has been delayed so long. I think we've got several President update statements that we have to try and get through. Important question times which update on the important work of all States departments. Indeed. And of course many items to debate after this matter is concluded, including the government work plan. Exactly. So because of this problem in the whole assembly right now, not just in policy and resources, or perceived to be in policy and resources, that has to be dealt with, and whether you're inside or outside of the committee. So I suppose, how do you move forward from this?
Well, I think what we've got to learn is that we spent 5 days, or just about 5 days, on the budget. We had 23 amendments. I think 20 or 21 were tabled. And very few, one or two got through, were substantive. But at the end of it, we weren't a lot different from where we were when we started the debate 5 days before. I think and I'm not criticising anybody in particular, we as an assembly have got to be more disciplined in the way that we deal with things, because you've got to get to the end of something. As I say, the example I've just given you is the budget, but there are many others over the last 3 years, probably over the last 7 or 8 years, that could be cited.
Is there right to bring amendments though, right, isn't it?
Well, I think that's the purpose, but the trouble often is that amendments come out of the left field, you know what I mean, or the right field. I'm not being political. They come out of and policy letters, whether it's from policy and resources or environmental and infrastructure or education or home affairs, have been well researched. Officers have looked into them, the committee have debated them, they've come forward with something. That doesn't necessarily mean they should be unamendable, but people just think sometimes of an idea a week or two before, they table them in the appropriate period of time, and then a policy letter which people have put perhaps years of work into is circumvented. To me, that's not good. That's not good democracy. It's democratic, but it's stopping good work done by E&I or Home Affairs or whoever it may be from being achieved.
But of course, that accusation has been levelled at policy and resources as well by certain deputies, saying that they've inserted themselves into certain debates and obstructed things, delayed things. How do you crack that?
I don't think that's true. I mean, nobody's perfect. I can't say. If you look back over the last 3 years, that isn't the case, although I can't remember any particular instance. You could always refresh my memory, by the way. That our job is to comment on policy letters. We get policy letters, that's a job of policy and resources to say, this is what they're putting forward, can we have a letter of comment, please? So our job is to do that, and we try and do it.
Okay, and I suppose maybe one other thing is, perhaps not personally, but for those who are exasperated about this kind of prolonged process and the delay, are you sorry that things have ended up where they are now?
Of course I am. I don't think it's any. I don't think this is doing Guernsey any good at all. With us kicking lumps out of each other, and I'm not intending any criticism of any group of people or individual. I just don't see how that's for the benefit of the island. I can tell you truthfully, and I don't speak in hyperbole or superlative adjectives, I've had more people since the motion of no confidence has been tabled that I don't know, whether it's a restaurant, supermarket or crossing the road, tap me on the shoulder and say, carry on, this is the right thing for you to do. People who don't necessarily agree with our GST stroke package, so we don't favour that, but we still think you've tried, you've done something which others perhaps haven't done, you've had the courage to put your head above the parapet, carry on. I've had that said by lots and lots and lots of people.
And on that, assuming that the motion of no confidence fails, we still have a refresh of sorts. There's 2 resignations from
Indeed.
members of your committee. Am I right in thinking that those still stand and there
Absolutely.
will be...
Both Deputy Helyar and Deputy Mahoney made it very clear indeed that whatever the result of the motion of no confidence, they will stand down on the 13th of December.
Okay.
They will stand down. I've had discussions with my colleagues on P&R, particularly Deputy Tock and Deputy Murray in particular, because they're seeking, like I am, to stay on. So it's their views are just as influential as mine as to who we're thinking about. Now, we've got views. I've actually spoken to one member today, but until those members have said, yes, we're happy for our names to go forward, it would not be right for me to come to you today and say it's Deputy A or Deputy B.
Understood, but the preparations are underway to
Absolutely.
fill those roles. And I suppose on a more general point, are you looking to bring experience in, maybe someone who's treaded a few states?
That's a very good question, because should I find out who I don't blame us. We're trying to bring in a mixture of people. If the 2 people that we are considering say yes, and we put their names forward, they're still going to be elected by the Assembly, but I hope they would be, then they're 2 talented people. One is very experienced in the States, the other's not so experienced in the States, but is a very able person.
And you would be confident to, as you say, it takes a long time to learn the job or a role on the top committee, you'd be happy for them to come in and hit the ground running and really march for the last 18 months that we have in this term with a lot of big issues still to resolve. Who knows what could happen internationally or in the market.
That's the point again. There are international issues bubbling under the surface, and you mentioned earlier on, all of a sudden we're having to spend crucial time, officer time, politicians' time, with the debate in the House of Commons, which is taking place this afternoon. We knew that issue was around. We've been dealing with it for a long time. It's taken up a lot of time already. But all of a sudden, we've got to devote resources to that, which means they can't be used somewhere else.
And of course, if this debate goes on quite long, there's already, as we discussed, the motion of no confidence debate.
It's got to fit. We've had 26, 27 people speak already. It's got to finish on Wednesday. I mean, just simple. It will finish on Wednesday. So by, I don't know, Wednesday afternoon at the latest, there will be a decision in my view.
But even after that, as we've spoken about the backlog of business, is there a concern that things are piling up and this is the final debate of the year?
What we've got to look at is that, see how much business we can get through, during this state's meeting, and we may be asking the bailiff and our colleagues in the states to have extra time in January so that by the end of January